Welcome to 12 Step Crashers podcast. This is our fourth episode. And today, Eric, we are excited to have not one, but two guests on the podcast.
Yeah, it's really confusing. I'm not sure which where I'm supposed to look at. So,
Yeah,
thanks.
look at me or look at yourself.
Yeah, you're
I think
I
pretty
look
enough.
great.
Look at yourself.
Thanks. I like this guy already.
he's very lovely, actually. So for the benefit of our audience, we are excited to have Chuck and Scarlett from Neurodivergent Experience, and a lovely Facebook group where we actually happen to connect. Fun fact, because I was doing some shameless promotion for the podcast without asking anybody. Lucky enough, neither Chuck or any of his staff took offense.
Sorry
Chuck
about
built a
that.
family on accident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was doing.
It was a lovely accident. So essentially, Chuck, perhaps you want to maybe open up and talk about Neurodivergent Experience and what it is that you're actually doing with that.
Yeah, sure. Honestly, I started it as an absolute whim. I just, I connected with a few neurodivergent life coaches, and, I just saw that there was like a need for something to connect us all. So I just started the group, and, I really didn't expect it to become anything that major. Like, I started it early October 2002. By January the next year, I was hitting like mid 300. And then a month later, 33 days later, I hit like 10,000 members. So it really grew to like really fast. And basically the whole idea behind the group is memes and information. That was the basis of it all. Connecting with other neurodivergent adults and having like shared experiences that we, that aren't honestly understood by neurotypicals. And, it just grew beyond my expectations, like 10,000-fold. Currently, we just hit over 174,000 members, and that is like in a year and 9 months. So it blows me away, honestly.
Amazing work, Chuck. And I do recall you saying that you would have been happy with only 50 members.
Absolutely.
Perhaps would have been easier to manage as well. But
Yeah.
I want to really demonstrate my appreciation for what you're doing, because it is right. For neurodivergent adult, there is very few, I wouldn't say safe space, but space where we can be understood and understand others and actually connect. Figure out that we're not that abnormal. After all, there's other people like us, and it feels good just to be
Exactly.
scrolling around those memes and those posts.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, that's like one major thing. Like, I don't explain it as a safe space because in, current, times of the internet, space has so many different meanings. So I say that it's a moderated space, and, we don't allow bigotry of any type, in the group whatsoever. Like, be who you are, but don't, degrade somebody else just because of anything that they cannot control. So that's the basis of our, the ideals of the group.
And I think that that's one of the reasons for the success of the group, is that it's very liberal. After all, as you said, you moderate stuff, but everybody has free speech, and in a large group like that, it's usually not really the case. So kudos to your entire team for maintaining that liberal aspect. Speaking of team, Scarlett,
Yes.
we haven't heard from you just yet, but perhaps you want to just share with us who you are and why you're with us today.
First of all, my name's Scarlett. I'm a medically retired butcher because I am part of the missed generation. I was diagnosed with 6 different behavioral disorders and sensitive hearing. And I was just going through Facebook one day, and I don't really spend a lot of time on Facebook because I have hobbies and stuff, and I have a large family, so I just keep track of them on there. And then one day I end up and tell me you're neurodivergent without telling me you're neurodivergent. And I just kind of found a tribe. So, and I worked my way up to moderator. I learned the rules. I learned some of the people. I don't hang out in all the groups because I spend a lot of the time in the chats. And the thing I like about the chats is that it's not limited to one thing. And no matter what group you're in, if you have an indie issue, you can discuss it. You can be who you are while you're playing a video game. You can, and that's one of the groups I don't go in, but I still monitor because people have the right for free speech, but they don't have the right to hurt people's feelings. So
Absolutely. And, I just want to add to what you said, Scarlett, that, I actually was the one who pushed for your promotion to, a bigger role in the chats because I saw what you did. I saw your connections to the people that you had in there. And I really felt that you really had a connection with a lot of the people in there.
Well, I mean, you get to know their habits. You get to know when they're not feeling well by the words that they present or the order of the words they present. That's a big thing with neurodivergence is the order in which you put your word.
Pattern recognition.
Yes. So, like in dealing with some of the people I deal with, I mean, there's a couple people, we didn't mean to grow into this, but there's a couple people I check on daily because we just want to make sure they,
You do.
Well, we want them with us still. And just because they're different, just because they're different doesn't mean they're not valid. I mean, everybody deserves to feel like they have somebody. Even if it's somebody across the pond saying, I love you, are you okay?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, and it's a way for people not to be alone, not to feel alone, not to feel objectified because NDs get taken advantage of by the medical system, by neurotypical people.
Absolutely.
We get outsmarted a lot. I mean, it's just not only that is the NDXP thing, the whole idea behind it is educating and helping adults live what neurotypicals consider a normal life. But for us, it's an adjusted life. So
that's beautifully said, Scarlett. And I think you touched on a few things that ties back to our mission, ourselves, exploring early recovery from a drug addiction perspective. But I think overall, what the community you've built, guys, is doing is a way for or platform for neurodivergent people to recover is maybe not the right word, but to rehabilitate themselves in a functioning manner, not necessarily in the neurotypical world, but in a world where they are understood. And you said it beautifully, Scarlett. But the fact of being heard and being loved and cared for is something that most of us at some point in our neurodivergent lives have felt depleted of. So, Chuck, I share with you the opinion that Scarlett has an exceptional emotional intelligence, and that in that role you are striving, Scarlett.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the compliment. I'm gonna proverbially hide right now. We accidentally got a guest. This is Ginger. She's my 14-year-old munchkin. She's blind. She does what she wants.
She's blind.
No.
So yeah,
that's completely fine. A lot of neurodivergent people, have higher empathy towards animals, so it's absolutely 100%, 110% fine that she came to visit.
Connecting with non-verbal person is also easier for us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Or maybe since Chuck opened the door, maybe he'd like to give a few examples, like for some people that are not familiar with neurodivergence, or maybe not sure if they are. What would be typical signs of neurodivergence behavior? Maybe there's Scarlett or Chuck answer.
Neurodivergence is such a wide range of traits, and like there's so many different diagnoses that are considered neurodivergent. If you know somebody that's dyslexic, they're technically neurodivergent. If you know somebody that's ADHD, they're neurodivergent. I cannot summarize within like this podcast traits that could be considered neurodivergent. There's such a wide range of them. So it's literally impossible to, capsulate
One thing that triggers a lot of ND people is misophonia, where you can't handle certain noises. Like I can't handle metal clicking against each other, and it used to make me sick and have seizures at the
misophonia is considered a specific neurodivergence. So you can have like traits that cover so many different things, but like I said, I don't have enough time in this podcast to cover every single one of them. ADHD, autism, OCD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, apraxia, what was that?
ODD, oppositional
ODD, yes.
defiance.
Yep, which was formerly multiple personality disorder. There, in a nutshell, if your brain works differently than what is accepted by society, most likely you are neurodivergent.
So to simplify for the audience and perhaps people that are more on the neurotypical side, I would say that neurodivergence is anything that made you feel weird or being ostracized by other kids at school for being differently wired. Maybe not all of these are neurodivergence, but several of these situations that limits our ability to connect with our peers, especially before we actually acknowledge and know that we are neurodivergent. I feel a lot of disconnection towards the world that is around us because it is hard for neurodivergent people to understand the world as it is because the brain computes it differently.
Absolutely.
I guess that's very vulgarized, but just to give an idea of how broad that is, you've mentioned like you can be on spectrum in terms of autism. It can be just hypersensitivity to a certain sound or textures. So it's very broad. And as you said, Chuck, I don't believe that's the purpose to describe them all. But I think one link that every neurodivergent have in question is that need to belong that usually is not fulfilled in adult life.
Absolutely. And like you touched on something where like being ostracized as a child, so like there's two types of neurodivergence that I've discovered, and I am not I do not have a degree. I haven't studied this professionally. I am only self-educated. I've been studying this on my own for the last 14 plus years, and I came to the realization that I could potentially be autistic and ADHD. because there are definite traits that I see that are autistic, and there are definite traits that I can see that are ADHD. So there's 3 different types of ADHD. ADHD hyperactive, which is the basic, like stereotypical ADHD, where you're like hyperactive and you are always like, bouncing around. And there's the ADHD, damn it, I forgot it.
There's
Um,
AG.
Inattentive, which
Mhm.
was ADD back in the 90s. They've combined that with ADHD, so it's ADHD inattentive. And then there's ADHD combined, which takes traits from both hyperactive and inattentive, and it's combined, so you have traits of both. I would have to say that without a proper diagnosis, I'm ADHD inattentive.
What is the AU
I think the reason
ADHD?
why they
That's autism ADHD. So it's
Okay.
the dual diagnosis, which has only been possible since, per the DSM-5, since 2013, when they combined, when they said that a dual diagnosis was possible.
and I think the reason why the kept the word hyperactive for all variants is because rather you're physically hyperactive and it can be seen externally
Absolutely.
or not, your brain is hyperactive, and this is at least I believe that's more my type, the unattentive, because
Yep.
sometimes there's just so many ideas at the same time in my brain. I wouldn't have the time to be physically hyperactive. I'm just too solicited in my own brain, and it's harder to diagnose because as a kid you're very calm and almost silent because you're too busy inside to actually interact externally, which can also, as you've mentioned, chart somewhere around autistic as well. You've mentioned it. The DMS5 keep changing the methods for diagnosis because ultimately it is highly subjective. The
Absolutely.
reason for diagnosis is to try to provide a treatment that is catered to a specific type of individuals. As Scarlett perhaps have an opinion, being diagnosed a couple times for a couple different things that perhaps were not all right.
Some of them were
That
dangerous.
subjectivity is difficult because also for mental health issues in general, like you being labeled with a specific disease and you have to deal with it. It's not necessarily a treatment program. It's more like, no, you now have this issue and you're categorized this way.
Yeah.
Well, that honestly is a major issue with AFABs, assigned female at birth, people, that there is a huge amount of misdiagnoses because typically, like previous to the DSM-5 revision, basically autism and ADHD were white, cis, het, male, and rich. If you didn't fit all 5 of those categories, most likely, you just have depression. You just have PTSD. It was your environment where you grew up.
But I
And
didn't
this
have a
is
bad environment. That's my
Yeah,
So
problem.
if you're not white, you have behavior problems, and if you are a female, you are hysterical. If we generalize,
Yes.
females also, present differently traits for autism and ADHD generally. So there was never everything that was based on all the diagnosis criteria was based on white, cis, het, male, rich patients. That's an
And
issue.
interestingly enough, it's also probably the population where there's an overdiagnosis,
And
especially for ADHD.
in my opinion, with the pharmaceutical companies, it's also a guaranteed customer
Hmm.
Yep.
because
Yes.
they've got the private insurance. It's not the government paying for it. It's private insurance. They can jack it up and charge you whatever you want with whatever they want with it, and then you're left with the
Absolutely.
end.
That stimulant medication without insurance is quite expensive. Let's face it.
Just for disclosure, Scarlett and I are in the United States. Eric and Ev, you are both in Canada. So there is a difference between our medical, insurance and, care, but they both suck.
And
It,
they both
in
can
different
suck.
ways.
Depends on your doctors. I mean, my
Fair,
situation
fair.
now, my situation now compared to 10 years ago is amazing. So I can't.
Absolutely.
Yeah, doctors.
Mm.
Yeah, we do have doctors, and we don't
Well,
have
you
to
don't have
pay
a
for
doctor. You have a doctor. I don't have a doctor.
It can be a
By the
good
way,
name
I'm
and a
looking for
bad
a
name.
doctor. Anyway, just send me a message.
that. But
Gotcha.
from
Gotcha.
like I think something that we can agree on is that you have to be lucky in some ways, or you have to be smart to navigate the system to actually receive the services you need, which is usually a challenge for people that are in need of services. So the actual discrepancy between, say, Eric doesn't have a family doctor, he hasn't had in the last 10 years, but he's on a wait list. I've had two different family doctors in the last 2 years. Like, why is that?
Yeah, why is
this a
that?
matter of lottery and luck? Hard to explain.
Yeah. And there's
No.
also the socioeconomic and racial divisions with
Mhm.
care. So if you're from a not as good area that you're living in, you might not get as good of a care as you would as if you were in more of a affluent neighborhood. And also, it's I really hate to bring this up, but skin color does matter. And, we're all,
Yeah.
4 of us are, pale faced,
Very white. Very
Yeah.
white.
We're
Yeah.
light
absolutely.
skinned.
And it's interesting how you bring it up, Chuck, because sometimes people will only look at the wealth gap. But
Right,
it's
yeah.
interesting, especially here in Canada, everybody has access to care. And it probably is easier to have access to care if you are in a minority or economically struggling. However, the quality of care and services you will receive definitely lower because, well, it's free. You don't have to complain. Just, go with that
Yeah.
script and figure it out.
Yeah.
As opposed to, say, yes, when you're more wealthy or more considered as a success from neurotypical standpoint, you definitely receive more attention or
Absolutely.
proper care.
And you're
Yeah.
probably
Unless
more
they-
assertive too to get that care.
Yep.
Unless you've got a doctor that's getting kickbacks from the government for prescribing medications, though, that's also a problem in this country.
That's something that is less of a problem in Canada. But I'd like to hear you out about this, Scarlett, and your journey through diagnosis
Okay, where do you want to start?
from
The
the
beginning's
beginning.
usually good.
Yeah.
Okay, from the time I can remember, I've had a headache. I've had migraines. They make me physically ill and vomit. I was told that I had sensitive hearing, and that caused some headache. And because I didn't want to bother anyone, I just let it go. They thought I was just an anxious kid. So I didn't do anything. And then when I had my own private insurance and I was off my parent, I got on an antidepressant called Paxil. And in the process of getting on Paxil, on December 31st, 1997, at 11:58 p.m., I smoked my first rock. I was an addict. I am an addict. In September, I will be 19 years clean off of stimulants. Let's just say that. And I was pain chasing, and I'd had every diagnosis under the sun. And then in 2005, my dad died from Agent Orange disease, and I flew off the handle. And the reason that I started doing a lot of things is because I had an education to pay off, because nothing in this country is free. But I also wanted to get rid of this headache. So I worked 10, 12 hours a day at a hog slaughtering plant. I'm an award-winning butcher. I have a degree in social work. I have a degree in special education with a minor in Spanish. I've won awards from Brazil, the UK, and the United States for cutting meat, and I'm a certified butcher. Now, after I've been in the 26th of September of 05, I had seen my partner of a long time having something done to him, for having a favor done for my product. So I went off. And then I took 87 pills, and 86 of them came up into a colander, thanks to Dawn dish soap and vinegar. That's what I ended up drinking. And I drank the barium. And the next day, if you look up something called the $5 Doctor, his name is Russell Donor. He looked at me and he said, "Kiddo, you've got an education. I know you've got common sense. You just had a moment. What do you want to do?" So I asked him to check me into the Niven Center in Quincy, Illinois. I went through a severe detox, and that was the road to a chemical detox, where they started me on Wellbutrin, Xanax, Lexapro, and Klonopin. I've been on a lot of deadly drug combinations. And then one of my favorite misdiagnosis was in 2007. All of this happened within 23 months. Of July 29th of 07, my brother flipped his Harley, because you know how you're supposed to mow the grass in. Well, someone hadn't, and he hadn't learned the traction on his tires, and he slipped. Well, that all happened within those couple of years, and then I went a little bit deeper into the depression. The shrink kept prescribing me more medicine, and then I found a doctor who was going to save me from this shrink, and I was so scared of this shrink that I told him I was moving to Iowa. I'm from Illinois, like the cornfield part. I was scared. My mom is from Germany, and I am not scared of anything, but I was scared of that man. And this doctor that was supposed to be helping me, I'm not going to mention her name, but if you said this hurt, it became another pill. You're a little bit hyper today. Let's give you some Adderall. After 5 years of being her patient, I was on more drugs than I did before I went to rehab the first time. So I've been dope sick twice. And it turns out that I went to a psychotherapist, a psychoanalyst, and she worked with my doctors, the one who took this doctor's place, because they found out that out of 2,500 clients, 95% were on Schedule 1 and at least 3. So she lost her license for a year, and I started seeing her replacement, and I asked her, "What's wrong with me? There can't be this much wrong with me." But back to my favorite misdiagnosis was with the shrink. I went in 1 week and I was in a good mood. My brother had gotten killed. The next week I was bipolar 1 with suicidal tendencies. I wasn't suicidal, I was sad.
Right, Scarlett, I'm sorry. Like this is like a prime example of the misdiagnosis that AFABs go through. Absolutely.
Elaborate on that.
And doctors have full liberty, right? It's subjective to their observation, and they can observe whatever the fuck they want.
Exactly. Yeah. And like it's like some of the most common misdiagnoses are, bipolar, what's the other one?
Schizophrenia.
The schizophrenia, depression, but it never touches on the exact issue because of the hysteria. and
The word
like
no longer exists in the MS5, but it still exists in the ed of shrinks.
the issue, like the DSM-5 does actually, like change, but it's the doctors that are actually diagnosing that are set in their old ways that have an issues, using the updated terminology or the criteria. And that is a major issue with, anybody, that's not the five that categories that I mentioned before. And like, I'm white, cis, het, male, but I'm not rich. So it was CPTSD for me because, I came from a broken home.
Again, highly subjective based on your socioeconomical background from the point of view of said doctor.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
and I grew up completely different. Than Chuck. My dad was a retired military officer, and my mom is a German immigrant. And then after he retired from the military, he was an engineer and a farmer, and we raised all of our food. My parents
like,
didn't.
right there, that mindset. Well, you're just a farmer. You must be,
Simpler of mind.
not as intelligent.
Meanwhile, he's got a PhD in engineering, but he doesn't
But-
know anything.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, like it's the socioeconomic status. You're a farmer? Oh, nothing.
Yeah,
Oh,
but he
PhD with, like multiple, papers published and peer reviewed, blah, blah, blah. You must know something.
But yeah, it was a challenge growing up with an engineer. He didn't take bets against him because he could build whatever machine. And that's another thing about neurodiverse people is a lot of us have a tendency of have really high IQs, and which I do. I have a 160 IQ.
I want to stop you there. IQs have nothing to do with with autism or any neurodivergence.
Really?
Yeah, some of us can have higher IQs, but some of us can also have lower IQs.
Okay.
Chuck, from
Okay.
your experience, would that affect
It's a spectrum, just like autism is.
would that affect the ability to function, or not even really? Because IQ is kind
Absolutely.
of, well, subjective as well. But yeah, what's your experience in that area?
Absolutely.
Right.
No, like, yes, your ability to function will depend on your IQ, but that was also one of the criteria with autism. Like, I want to say probably pre 1998. I think that was the previous 3 to 4 change with the DSM manual, and there was the IQ aspect of the diagnosis, but it has been shown that there is not a difference. There is a difference with your ability to function, but you can still be autistic and extremely smart, because there's also, so like, one of the main examples that people are, like, quote, which is absolutely wrong, but Rain Man, Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise movie. There's the
So
you have like abilities. So you might have lower abilities on one, like on your social and your functioning, but there's the ability to do, like, play music, like snap of a, like you can just like hear music once and play it absolutely perfectly. A savant. That's what I was looking for.
that's a lot.
Yes. So like, you can have lower abilities on some aspects, but like on other aspects, don't even, like, do not even try to FA
FO. F around, find out.
But
So Scarlett, you were
So is that
mentioning, I believe you were in your story at the point where you mentioned your dad has passed and things started to unfold from there, right?
yeah. And then I stayed by myself for 10 years. My mom and I lived together because she'd never been without a child. I paid bills, maintained my job and everything like that. And then on all of the medications, by the time I ended my uh, journey with that doctor, I was on 120 milligrams of Adderall a day, 8 milligrams of Xanax, 40 milligrams of Buspar, 40 milligrams of Lexapro. I was on stomach acid medicine, and that's all that I can remember. And then eventually I met my partner, Zach, and he was like, hey, you're living on honey bun pills and Slim Fast. You can't do that. Plus, you're a vegetarian, and maybe you don't need all these pills. So we fought together. We went to the doctor. My doctor and my therapist worked together, and they found out that I don't have a behavioral disorder. My right brain tonsil is growing down my spine, and I have a bubble of cerebral spinal fluid, and it's called a Chiari-1 malformation. And then it's kind of the opposite of spina bifida, and that was more than likely caused by Agent Orange with my dad's military service. And I have complete cranial neuralgia. And if I get overstimulated, then the nerves around my head swell up and they have to be paralyzed every 3 months. So instead of being on all those pills, I now take Effexor, and that is because of pain from the inside of my bones out. Because in the back of my head, my tonsil right here is trying to go into my spinal cord. So it creates a lot of pain. It creates seizures, a lot of esophageal convulsions. But I asked the doctor, I said, what do I need? What do I need? What can I get off of? And so I take Effexor, Xanax, I take a pill for twitching, and I take Prilosec, which I think after 45, I think everybody takes that. And I'll be 49 this year. So we've only had this diagnosis for a few years. So I get Botox injections from here all the way around my head and on my shoulders. So instead of having behavioral disorders, my doctor recognized that I didn't feel good. I wasn't well. And I gained a lot of weight getting off the Adderall because, and my question with that was, why would you put somebody that has been 8 years clean on better dopes than they were on before they went to rehab?
Yeah.
I mean, that's always been my question. And then not to mention the Hippocratic Oath is to do no harm.
But the doctor will
Well,
ask you,
I
are you
mean,
ADHD or not? There's the medication if you're ADHD. And that's pretty much where they stopped
but
it
aren't
at.
they the ones supposed to know? So
Well,
yeah,
like you said, with the, prescriptions and, who's getting paid for, prescribing what, you know.
a lot of her
Oh,
patients.
I think it's also a symptom of your. I don't want to speak for the Americans on the panel here, but it sure sounds like everything's quickly fixed with a prescription here.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of different medication to be handed out without doing a lot of physical tests first.
See,
No, you're absolutely correct. You got this problem? Here's a pill.
yeah. So we spent the next 3 or 4 years. I had to get nerve tests. I had to get MRIs. I've seen plastic surgeons. I've done everything, but I have what they call a fugue state, which means that when the pain gets so bad, they used to call it DID, but it's a fugue state, and I can't remember anything when I'm in pain. Because
I've witnessed this in chats there is a major difference between Scarlet pre, treatment
Pre
and
Botox.
after treatment. Yeah, pre Botox and after Botox. It takes like about a week for it to kick in, but there is a clear difference between pre and after,
I
pre
mean,
and post.
my heart doesn't change. It's just I'm a little bit edgier, a little bit more hyper. What
Absolutely.
else? Huh?
Yeah, it's like you just there's
It's a different person.
yeah, absolutely. Like it's two different personalities, and so like I can understand, the bipolar potentially,
Yeah. Oh,
but
yeah. Sorry. But yeah, I can understand the bipolar. And then the guy he was getting kickbacks from the government. So he kept prescribing me 2,000 milligrams of Depakote, and I would not get my antidepressant if I didn't pass the drug test for the Depakote, which I didn't need, and I didn't have seizures before I took it. Huh?
yeah, welcome to America.
Welcome to America.
Yeah, so if you skip that medication or doesn't make you feel right, but nobody will listen to you, and if you don't take it, then you get to not have your antidepressant, which you are addicted to because ISSR are addictive. It's fucked up.
And now I take no behavior medicine. They found the problem. They cured the addict, and I don't dope seek anymore. I don't do any of that.
Yeah, which is, if I may go off that point, which is a major issue with neurodivergent persons. For me, I will never say that somebody that is neurodivergent is an addict.
Interesting.
That's my personal opinion, because they are dopamine seeking. They're looking to become quote unquote normal. A lot of neurodivergence, if you are not neurodivergent, there's an 80% rate of substance overuse, and like neurotypicals, they are, I think, probably like 50-60%.
Yeah,
but those are like they you could also have like the neurotypicals that are not diagnosed with neurodivergence, because the neurodivergence is not diagnosed as much as it could be because of the diagnosis criteria and the DSM-5 and the IDC-11,
plus
which is what they use in majority of countries.
plus if you add on top of it the fact that people know there's a stigma around it, so people that perhaps suspect that they have something
Exactly.
won't seek for diagnosis.
Right. And something
absolutely.
one thing that I'd like to add is that typicals like to use because it feels good. NDs like to use it because you get an escape. You get to not be you for a minute. You get to feel normal, whether it's impaired or not. Everybody feels normal when everybody's impaired. So you get addicted to that feeling too.
Absolutely.
I mean, addiction isn't just a substance.
I want about something with you, Eric, because we keep saying
honest moment.
Sorry, we keep saying since we started this podcast that we don't get urges, right? Which is a very different experience from a lot of addicts we are getting to interact with. So that's interesting what you're saying, Chuck. Like I would be cautious myself to say that I'm not an addict because I am, but I can understand the nuance and differentiation due to neurodivergence, and what you said, Scarlett, really ring a bell with me. Yes, seeking relief is definitely always has been the reason for me to use. I don't want to feel better. I just want to feel less shitty. And there's a big difference for that. I want a medication. I want a solution. I'm not trying to get fucked up. That's not the point.
Did you notice that it took you a lot longer to get messed up? because you had to get through your. And that's something I learned in pain clinic, because I don't want to take opiates. They want to give me all this morphine and crap like that. And I'm not doing that. I lost my point. So someone please just take it.
No,
I'm
I'll
sorry.
jump in here because to go off Ev's point, completely open and honest, considering the podcast here. After my previous job, where I was working 55 hours a week with I needed to be exact with the job. So it was a high stress job, 55 hours a week. I'd go downstairs with, my coworker and drink a 6-pack. And then I'd go home. Well, I'd go to the bar, drink another 6-pack, grab something to eat. And it was because I didn't eat too much during the week or, during the day. And I just needed something to shut my brain off. Like, literally, yes, I fit the diagnosis criteria for being an alcoholic. For me, it wasn't necessarily being an alcoholic. It was shutting off all the overload that I had for dealing with loud machines all day, dealing with, somebody on my back, like, oh, we need to get these done, and then going out and trying to be social with being overloaded. I just wanted to shut off because I'm hypersensitive. So, like, you touch me and if I don't know you're coming and you touch me on my back, I'm swinging. Like, zero, like, I've swung at, like, dear friends of mine because of this. Like, they patted me on the back and, like, I just swung.
I relate so much with what you just said,
But
Chuck.
once I drink
Yeah,
enough,
once you drink enough,
I become numb. Like, it doesn't affect me as much. So, like, somebody can pat me on the back, I'll still turn around, but I'm not swinging.
yeah, I relate a lot with what you just said. Like, being highly productive at work. My addiction is linked to productivity a lot, and the counter effect of not being able to stop. In COVID, I was working from home. I was never not working, but I was also never fully working. It was just like totally disorganized, and substance use came into play to try to stabilize all this. It's not an excuse, but it helps me make sense out of it the way you say it. Yeah, absolutely. Drinking a 6-pack to get off the steam from work, but then having some more steam to get off. And it's not because you want to get fucked up. It's because your brain still function at too high revolution, and it needs to slow down. And I'm pretty sure, Eric, based on discussion we already had, that this resonates a lot with you, right?
Well, how many times do I have to, in the podcast, be careful how I talk about drugs,
Yeah.
right? Because I know I got to stay away from them, right? At least that's what I'm told. But how many times have I said that I've used it as like management? When I used ecstasy, I broke an ecstasy pill into 4. Sometimes I would only lick it to one piece. I didn't use the whole thing. I never abused. Everything I did was managing whatever I needed at the time. I can never tell what the dosage was going to be because it's not a regulated drug. So I managed it as I felt I needed to. And the same thing when I got sober the first time from alcohol, I never stopped doing cocaine. Now, I did really, really small lines of cocaine during the day. I used a very small amount of cocaine. And even when I fell off the wagon and I started drinking again, the thing about my cocaine use is the lines never got bigger. Remember I told you this before? I never spent a lot of money on cocaine. That part never changed. I would drink like a fish. The lines would stay the same. Whether I'm sober or whether I was drinking, the lines would stay
Which
the
was
same.
essentially your ADHD
I always
medication.
used cocaine as opiates.
He was literally medicating himself at that point. And one thing that people don't realize is that addicts can function right in front of you without you knowing it. Because I was working on a bachelor's, I was working 10, 12 hours a day at cutting meat. And then I was on the Humane Society to help animals and stuff. And it took a lot of therapy with my family to get my family back. We did not get along for a long time. And I didn't have to go through a program. I opted not to. So I chose the deflection route in therapy. So instead of doing drugs, I joined Girl Scouts. So I was a Girl Scout leader for about 10 years. And, I mean, it was kind of fun. But, I mean, the drugs that I used, I would do it in the morning. And as long as I got to bed by midnight and I got that glass of milk and that banana in, I was fine for the next 12 hours. That's what I lived on when I did it. So, but one thing about it is, though, I had a strong support system, and I still do. And I am going to say this. I am a Christian. I'm not ashamed of it. I don't push it on people. However, being a Christian has helped. And knowing that my family never gave up on me, that's what helped. No matter what. If I asked them to go to therapy with me, they went to therapy with me. And that happened twice a week for 3 years. I spent $30,000 on therapy to have my family back. And then I spent another $400,000 getting my diagnosis. I ate my savings up. I don't have kids, and I was working at a slaughtering plant. So I was making, when minimum wage was $4, I was making $12. So I had the opportunity. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, that's a major point with recovery, and having people around you is like a major thing that you need in recovery. From my limited understanding, I know Eric and Ev can probably speak a lot better about this on this point, but that is also a major issue with neurodivergent persons, that they don't understand social norms, so they don't have as strong as friendships overall, like, because you're always like too intense, you're too too-y in essence,
or you're not
you
enough.
know
And
and you're not enough, you're too much, you're like, there's always a
Or
reason
both.
not. Yeah, like, there's always a reason to not be friends with somebody that's NB. So that, I think, leads into the whole issue of neurodivergence and addiction.
regardless of addiction, you made me realize, as I was listening to you, Chuck, that any friend that I made before the age of 25, that relationship is tied in substance abuse together. That's the essence of most of my friendships when I was a teenager. Not because those friendship were
that makes perfect
not
logical
because those
sense.
friendship were not genuine or real, but in order to get into them and to invest in them, I had to be fucked up. Otherwise, I would be seclusive and just by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And as
no.
soon as the drugs ran out, the friendship ran out
Mhm.
too.
Yeah, it fade away without no
Well, you get
harm
sober.
or any resentment. It's just we don't use together. We're not together.
I'm just curious. It made me think, hearing this and the other issues, but the issues around drugs. I wouldn't think neurodivergence would be too welcome maybe in AA if they're just getting rid of alcohol, but they're not, let's say, getting rid of something else, because AA is so rats.
AA is also not keen
Have
on
you heard issues like that?
on diagnosis. So the science and AA is not exactly a
That's
good
true.
match. But go ahead, Chuck.
I think Scarlett had something to say.
Honestly, here we have a lot of people that go to AA drunk. So I'm going to say that AA really does not have an effect down here. Plus, we have a major CRACK issue around here. And so it's not working. Yes, it's small town Illinois, but we have issues and we have resources, but you don't fit into AA, you don't fit into NA, you don't fit in anywhere because all these people are like, you don't understand what it's like. I had somebody tell me 3 weeks ago that they didn't think I ever did drugs. I'm like, it's because it's been almost 2 freaking decades. And the thing that keeps me sober is when I was a slinger, when I was paying off my education, I had pure stuff. Now you hear about the tranking, the doping of the dope. You never know what you're going to get, and you never know if you're going to die. Oh, if
Yeah,
that's not enough to
absolutely.
keep you sober, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, but people are so addicted to the high and the uh, whatever else there is with the, addiction, that the risk is worth it, from my understanding.
I never did opiates,
It
but
just
I
depends.
think this is also a differentiator. People that get opiates addiction, the addiction is stronger than reason. I've witnessed this with so many people that I love. It's a constant battle, even once sober. I'm not sure if this is because I never touched opiates or it's because of my neurodivergence and the way that I'm built. But for me, it's always solution oriented. If the substance is not achieving something, it is absolutely useless and I'm not interested in it. I drank to be social. I've used cocaine to be the best at what I do, whatever that was. And I failed at that. But anyways, all that to say that if it stopped working, cocaine was not working when I went to treatment. Therefore, I never used cocaine after. It doesn't work anymore. It's ruined.
It didn't do it for you. Oh,
I've been reminded of like another point, just with the conversation that we've had tonight. Neurodivergent persons have a different pain tolerance. So, like, I've gone into the ER for, like, I had a bad tooth and like I'm just in agony. But I'm like, yeah, can I get something for my tooth? And he's like, and the doctor's like questioning me hard, like, oh, why did you come to, the ER? Oh, why, why didn't you go to the dentist? I'm like, I'm in freaking pain, but I wasn't showing the pain. I was just being like, this hurts. I need something, and that is like a major issue with NDs and, pill poppers.
communication needs.
Yeah, yeah. And like, but there's also the, pill popper epidemic. So like if you go in, oh come on man, just give me some pills, man. They're gonna think you're just, trying to get high.
Well,
There's the disconnect between, you know, knowing that you're neurodivergent, having a diagnosis, and what is expected from being neurodivergent.
well, and on that, I think there's a difference between healthcare and medicine because
Absolutely. Absolutely.
what I receive is healthcare. Excuse me, nose itches. What I receive is healthcare. My doctor wants me to function as well as I can, know my limit, because I'm an overachiever. I don't know if you can figure that out yet.
Really? Never noticed.
Never. Anyways, so always been an overachiever, and then now that I had to completely give up a 25-year career, I didn't know what to do. So I had to find my own coping mechanisms. And my doctor has enrolled me in something called the Critical Care Pain Management program. It's they don't know what to do with me because we source our food I don't add salt. I don't want the opiates. Every time I go to the neurologist, you want a morphine patch? I've gotten it to the point where they don't ask me because I don't want to go to rehab twice. I was dope sick twice already. I don't want to risk it again. I can't. And like what we were talking about one day, I've got one more relapse, but I don't know if I've got one more recovery. And so Tracy works with me, and like I have to take a walking cane because sometimes or a walking stick. Zach made me a walking stick. We're designing one out of a tree stem or a tree stump so that way I can lay my hand on it. But she doesn't want me to be disabled. She wants me to be ably disabled. Like I've got the handicap placard to park closer, but if I feel well, take my ass in that store. Yeah, and that's what I do. I mean, it does take a little bit of discipline, and with that pain that Chuck was mentioning, there's not a pain gauge for the disease that I have. The combination, only 600,000 people on the planet have it, and most of us have not reproduced. The Chiari with the cranial neuralgia, because the first minutes that I'm awake, and this is why I thought I was crazy. I thought everybody lived in pain. I thought as soon as you woke up, that whole front of your face just pounded and throbbed and made you wish you were an ape.
That's literally like something that not everybody understands, neurotypical or neurodivergent. Like all neurodivergent persons are different, so there's like comorbidities of like different diagnoses, but not everybody has those. But there's also the aspect of neurotypicals don't understand what some neurotypical or neurodivergent people go through.
It's even hard between us as neurodivergent because our stories are all so different. Like hearing Scarlett, like I hear and I understand what she's saying, but I have no idea what it must have been like,
Absolutely.
Lots of needles, lots of shots in the head. At one point, my sister puked in her hands in the plastic surgery. I'd gotten 40 shots that day because they said, "Where does it hurt?" And I learned a couple months ago that stop pointing at things at the neurologist because they just stick a needle in it. I'm not doing that anymore. And I get 31 shots in my head every 3 months, and I get 2 in my shoulder and my shoulders or hips, depending on where I want to be sore. And then Zach takes me for a milkshake because over 12, they don't give you a sticker when you get shots. And I think I earned it. So instead of a sticker, So instead of a sticker, I get a strawberry milkshake.
Hey, that works.
It works. Simple pleasures. So, do you guys have any questions about this stuff?
Well, I do have one right off the bat, and hearing like different experiences in that, and the cost of, but the fact that they just hold out pills. How hard is it to get diagnosed? Let's say with ADHD or ADD. I mean, is it a huge process? Is it exhaustive? And is there resources for this, or do they just always send you guys pills?
Well, overall, a basic diagnosis for just one, from my understanding, like I'm not like, saying this officially, but usually for an adult to get diagnosed with neurodivergence, ADHD, autism, OCD, blah, it generally runs approximately $2,000. And not everybody has $2,000 to, get diagnosed. But
that's actually what it is here in $2,000.
Yes, but it's either $2,000 and it's exactly the cost, $2,600 for my daughter that has ADHD diagnosis at age 7 actually. But the other option is you wait for 7 years and you get it for free. That's how bad Canadian free
Yeah.
health
But
system
what if
is
you're
for
what if you're an
neurodivergence.
adult? What if you're an adult that's never been diagnosed,
It's
though?
almost impossible to get a diagnosis without paying for it as an adult because you're not the demographic that doesn't that
But that's
that
what
did
I'm
not
saying.
function up until this day. Obviously, you're functioning. You're an adult, so why would we prescribe you
Well,
something?
I never heard the word. I never even heard of the word neurodivergence until I got sober. It was in treatment from a counselor when she heard how I used drugs during all my lifetime. Said, you know what, you probably are neurodivergent and you should take a test.
Yeah. And this is the keystone of what NDXP, Neurodivergent Experiences, is looking to do. Because there is no support for adults. There is no support for, exactly what you just said. Oh, you've been, just living your whole entire life. You're fine. There's no issue. Okay, so you have a few issues. No, whatever, man. You can deal with it. No, this is literally yeah. Here's a pill. Have fun.
I had mine addressed differently though.
Yeah, but like literally, this is what we are focusing on with NDXP is the support for adults. We've got we're working on getting a hub going, online hub. There's so many things that I'm working on right now, and like I'm slacking on the website neurodivergenceexperiences.com. I'll send you guys a link tree that has all our links on it. But this is the basis of what I am looking to do. Support adults in getting diagnosed, getting the support, getting the necessary resources that they need. Like I even have like an idea like far out, like 10 years, but getting the drugs that are needed for us, because there's the issue with the Adderall specifically with as it's a controlled substance, there's a limited amount that can be produced by each company. So there's a shortage. It's so simple to make, but the whole point is that each company can only make so much, and it is so cheap that it's not worth producing
That's
it.
why people go get their pills in the street because it's also cheap to produce there, and to lace and press pills are a real issue. But speed is just
Yeah, and then it's laced with whatever, fentanyl or whatever.
everything's laced with fentanyl. Even cocaine is laced with fentanyl these days. When I got my first speed
Absolutely.
test when I got into
We've
treatment
had some
had more
deaths.
fentanyl than cocaine in it. It's crazy.
I'm not laughing at you, but yeah.
And honestly, I know in New York State, they give out free test kits for fentanyl. I don't know in like other states or other jurisdictions, but I know in New York State they don't ask any questions. Do you want a free test kit to test for whatever? Here
we
you
have
are.
that also here.
We don't ask any questions.
I'm not sure everywhere in Canada, but here in Quebec, especially in the urban region, it's easily accessible, especially for people that are more the targeted at risk, say people on the street. So I don't know what is the success rate. Like people would rather take a odd shot without knowing than knowing before they actually take the odd shot, but at least the resource is accessible.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I understand, like I mentioned before, like there's 80% people, 80% of neurodivergent people have substance use issues, but I'm looking to coordinate with, there's this one brand that provide testing kits. I'm looking to eventually work with them. Because honestly, the way that I found out about them is because I used to be a printer, printing labels. I printed the first labels for this brand. So I know
Damn.
about them. I know that they've been in business for a while. I'll send you guys the link and whatnot. They're basically just they're providing test kits for drugs. It doesn't matter.
Good though, because then you can gauge if you want to do it or not, and that way you can gauge your risk and all that. Now,
Absolutely.
there's something that I want to address, and it's a type of therapy that I went through that a lot of people don't get the chance to go through because it's very expensive and it's very limited. And it's called EMDR and somatic experience. I mentioned those two yesterday. What happens is if you have a past trauma, that you have something from your childhood, we addressed a lot of the death in my family, like my dad and my brother right away, and all that. And the way she did it is you put your hands out like this, and then she taps. Mine was a she. And then they take you back to the trauma, and it's a safe place, and you get to react. So it's a way of resolving. It's a way of resolving trauma by addressing it yourself in a guided place, and it's also correlated with guided meditation and somatic experience. The somatic experience part of it is, for example, when a fox is being hunted by a lion, okay, how they get that amped up energy and everything. You get to address your trauma, you get to feel that energy, but then you decompress out of it and you are able to center. They started using a lot of this stuff on veteran because the PTSD was too bad. The shell shock was getting bad. They didn't know what to do, so they had to take him back to it. And I mean, it's not an easy therapy to go to. You have to be dedicated to your mental health. You've got to, I mean, this has got to be, sometimes you have to be selfish.
You want to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes you have to be selfish. And my family, thank God for my family. But they did it with me. My niece, my sister, because we only had women left over. But everybody took their turn with me about 3 or 4 times, and everything got taken care of. And she also addressed pain management with me because that was when I was starting to find the diagnosis and everything. So I got to address pain in a different way.
But
Really
Scarlett,
interesting.
Excellent.
Actually,
Excellent.
what she's talking about, Ed, I think you told me you didn't have this guy, but there is a guy once a week, one counselor,
if
that does
hypnotism, right?
some hypnosis and somatic and
Yes.
EDMR.
But
It's similar.
hypnosis is not exactly the same thing, and that was my question to Scarlett.
He does a lot of similar things with the tapping and that as well, and they haven and they
Yes,
call
well,
it.
I think the
Mm-hmm.
distinction is that he's not a certified EMDR specialist. That's why he's labeled as hypnotist.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
he's a psychologist.
Yeah, it's a psychologist, but EMDR
Crystal's
is a very
labeled a
specific
psychoanalyst.
field
Yeah.
of practice, especially in Canada. It's extremely rare.
Exactly. No, I was just pointing. I was just pointing out because we've talked about quite a bit before. Our heritage is not like other treatment centers, whereas there's a lot of
It's
different
holistic,
approaches.
and everything can be valid in that approach. Rather, it's hard science or, well, more softer science, if we could say. But everything that works and will keep you sober and get you out of your trauma is worth trying, right? So yoga is as important as gym.
I bring it up. I bring it up because Farley mentioned the veterans, and he happened to work with a lot of the veterans, so that's why I brought it up.
That seems reasonable.
But Scarlett, I wanted to ask
I mean,
you,
it's,
how does the typical approach bring you to the trauma? What's the guidance?
well, honestly, it's just, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? And goes into a step and it decrescendos into your trauma. And then you've got your trauma, you're dealing with it, and then you crescendo out of it. When you leave your session, you should feel clean. I always felt clean afterward, just like my
I
brain
have a
was
very
washed.
similar
Not
experience
in a bad way.
with the guy that does similar treatment. You're right, Eric. Uh, so the latter approach,
That's how it didn't work at all on
yeah,
me.
it is again a matter of
He
faith,
actually
right?
told me, I should use the word. Stop doing that.
There's a lot of people that are
Damn.
resistant to that approach, and it just won't work if you don't let yourself in. Yeah.
It was weird. It was weird at first, and I didn't think I was going to get anything out of it. But the more we progressed, about 8 months into it, the more we progressed, the deeper we got. And I'm going to tell you that people wonder why I have such a decent attitude. I mean, it has nothing to do with the fact that I don't have anything wrong. It has something to do with the fact I've accepted what's wrong with me. I know I'm neurodivergent, but I know that I'm able to do things and I'm able to adjust this. You don't have to be incapable in the typical world. So, and if you really look at it, the neurodivergents are starting to overpopulate the neurotypicals. It's starting.
We're not starting to. We are.
Hey, that's interesting, right?
If you take into account everything that is considered neurodivergent,
We wouldn't have anything.
we overpopulate neurotypicals. The people that have the societal accepted norms of brain function. Society is run by like a handful of neurotypicals that see things in one way. And in my opinion, neurodivergent people created the world that they're running.
Yes. But there's an interesting question that goes from there, Chuck. We are more numerous, of course, today, but is it because it is more expressed or it is more observed, it is more validated? Like, I don't believe like there's an outburst of neurodivergence. That's probably always been there. We just have been not cognizant of it.
It's the to be neurodivergent, you have to fit the diagnosis criteria. And not to say that the diagnosis criteria has lessened or eased, but there are more people that are willing to, from like the mid 90s, like it was 1 in like 500 people that were diagnosed autistic. I'm just going off the top of my head. Now, since 2020, it's 1 in 66 people that are diagnosed autistic because there's more understanding of what it is to be autistic. So, like, it's not that there's more NDs that are created or, that are, born. It's more of we're understanding neurodivergence more.
It's interesting. What I remember as a kid, like kids that were autistic or kids that were trisomic, there was almost no difference. They seem to be invalid just as much. And not from my perception, but the world perception, how they were described, or, like your perspective for future autonomous. Like it was always said and mentioned to me as a kid that if you're autistic, you cannot function, which is absurd. It is literally absurd because the most functioning people I know are all on the spectrum without an exception.
Yeah.
Tell me where to go, tell me what to do. I'll be right there for you. Tell me what to say, no matter if it's true. I'll say it all for you, for you, for you.
I used to be the type of kid that would always think the sky is falling. Why am I so differently wired? Am I a Martian? What kind of twisted experiment am I involved in? Cause I don't belong in this world. That's why I'm scoffing at authority, defiant often. Flying off at the handle at my mom, no dad, so I am non-compliant at home. At school, I'm just shying awkward. And I don't need no goddamn psychologist trying to diagnose why I have all these underlying problems, thinking he can try and solve them. I'm outside chalking up drawings on the sidewalk and in the front drive talking to myself. Either that or inside hiding off in the corner somewhere quiet, trying not to be noticed cause I'm crying and sobbing. I had a bad day at school so I ain't talking. Some cocksucker shoved me into a fucking lockup cause he said that I eyeballed him.
And if you fall, I'll get you there. I'll be your savior from all the wars that I fought. Inside your world, please have faith in my words. Cause this is my legacy, legacy. This is my legacy, legacy. There's no guarantee, it's not up to me. You can only see. This is my legacy, legacy. Legacy, legacy.
I used to be the type of kid that would always think the sky is falling. Why am I so differently wired? Am I a noggin? Cause sporadic as my thoughts come, it's mind-boggling. Cause I obsess on everything. In my mind, small shit bothers me. But now my father, he said sayonara and split. But I don't give a shit. I'm fine long as there's batteries in my Walkman. Nothing's the matter with me, shit, look on the bright side. At least I ain't walking, I bike ride through the neighborhood of my apartment complex on a 10-speed, which I've acquired parts that I find in the garbage. A frame, then put tires on it, headphones on it, straight ahead. If kids try and start shit, but if this is all there is for me, life offers, why bother even trying to put up a fight? It's nonsense, but I think a light bulb just lit up in my conscience. What about them rhymes I've been jotting that kinda giving me confidence instead of trying to escape through my comics? Why don't I just blast a little something like Onyx to put me in the mood to wanna fight and write songs that say what I wanna say to that kid that said that I eyeballed him? Grab hold of my balls like that's right, fights on, bitch. Who would've knew from the moment I turned the mic on that I could be iconic in my conquest? It's word to Fight Dog from a Tribe Called Quest.
This is my legacy, legacy. This is my legacy, legacy. There's no guarantee, it's not up to me. You can only see. This is my legacy, legacy. Legacy, legacy.
I used to be the type of kid that would always think the sky is falling. Now I think the fact that I'm differently wired's awesome. Cause if I wasn't, I wouldn't be able to work words like this and connect lines like crosswords. And use my enemies' words as strength to try and draw from and get inspired off them. Cause all my life I was told and taught I am not shit by you whack fucking giant sacks of lying dog shit. Now you shut up, bitch, I am talking. Thought I was full of horseshit and now you fucking worship the ground on which I am walking. Me against the world, so what? I'm Brian Dawkins versus the Holo and 16 Lions offense. So bring on the Giants, Falcons, and Miami Dolphins. It's the body bag game, bitch, I'm supplying coffins. Cause you dicks butt kiss, bunch of Brian Baltingers. You gon' diabolic, I've been diabolical with this dialogue since 99 Raucous. You don't respect the legacy I leave behind, y'all can suck a dick. The day you beat me, pigs will fly out my ass in a flying saucer full of Italian sausage. The most high exalting, and I ain't halting till I die of exhaustion. Inhale my exhaust fumes. The best part about me is I am not you, I'm me, and I'm the fire marshal. And this is my
legacy, legacy. This is my legacy, legacy. There's no guarantee, it's not up to me. You can only see. This is my legacy, legacy. Legacy, legacy.
Yeah, like so not everybody that I'm going to mention has been officially diagnosed with autism, but they fit the criteria for Albert Einstein, Alan Turing, Nikola Tesla, possibly Alexander Hamilton. He might have been ADHD. It's always existed, but there hasn't always been a name for it.
There's one thing that links all of these people together is that they've served the best interest of neurotypical people. They have been exploited at the striving in their career. They were not serving their own interest. It was bettering that neurotypical world.
Absolutely, exactly. Best scenario, or like best case scenario that gets your point across is Nikola Tesla. He literally had every single component of radio. Marconi, yes. He put every single one of those patents together and made the radio. Marconi is, has the title of father of radio. No, it was Nikola Tesla. But Nikola Tesla said, he's doing good work. I'm not going to, I'm not going to, prosecute him.
And that's interesting. Yeah.
So, right there.
Go ahead.
No, right there, that your point, we don't care, neurodivergent people don't care necessarily about, there's no ego in what we do. It's more of how can we better society?
That's true. That feeling of selflessness, or the self is not that important. I felt that very often in my life, but I've turned out to discover in recovery this was just avoiding myself more than not caring for my own fate, right? It's more like I can ignore myself for the benefit of the people I love, let's say, or for the greater good of my employer. I don't really matter if everybody else around is good. So I think this is something similar in the way that people pleasing in a way. Nikola Tesla was happy that his discoveries were assembled together and brought forward. And that was in itself satisfying enough for him without having credit for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. People have accused me with neurodivergent experiences of having this being, for money, or, to my ego, I'm narcissistic, I'm, dictator, you name it. I've been called it pretty much. Yes, but I've never seen it as, hey, let me do this so I can make money.
Yeah.
I've got 174,000 members in the group. I could sell that to Autism Speaks or something. Yeah. And they love that. I just say $1 per person per member.
That would be a reasonable price for you to be paid for it, if that would be your interest. But at the same time, neurodivergent people have been abused all their life. So there is a natural tendency to be suspicious.
Absolutely.
Right? Which I guess you understand that reaction being neurodivergent yourself, right?
Yeah, I do. This was from people that I trusted. So it was a little bit, it dug a little bit deeper. But yeah, there's been multiple times where majority of my moderators for the group have walked away from the group because of, oh, you just want to make money. Oh, you just want to, you don't care about the people. It's not that I don't care about the people, but I understand that maybe not everybody can be helped by the group. And am I focused on money? Yeah. So I can expand and help more people.
we live in a capitalist world. We need money to do things. It shouldn't be taboo, and it shouldn't be shameful to seek resources to provide better resources. Of course, you need money, and that should be one of
Absolutely.
your focus in that adventure.
Absolutely. And like, I hate the fact that everybody is putting so much effort towards the group without being paid. Like, I recognize what they're doing and how much effort they're putting forth, and I want to be able to provide for them.
And you're so patient. I've witnessed it already. You're just so patient about situations that I would lose my mind. Your perspective rather than the individual itself, because you will just burn yourself at helping or adjusting to every individual little request. It's a one size fit all because you cannot fit everybody. Like, go see a therapist if you need therapy. Chuck cannot do everything.
Ev, literally, that was the major, like 75, at least 75%, if not 90% of my moderators walked. And it was what you just said was literally the basis of why they walked. We had 138 members, 138,000 members, and maybe, and I am, pushing this number, 20 members had an issue with 4 or 5 posts. That's why my moderators walked. That was the basis of the split.
I guess it's human nature, right?
So yeah, I was looking at the 100. What was
I
that?
said it's human nature. It's to be expected, but at the same time, from your perspective, that must have been very hurtful.
Yeah, it was 20 members that were replaced, and it's not that I don't want to help those 20 members, but expanding and growing and helping 200 more members is more important than making sure those 20 members were, felt like they were being listened to. Because I had been through that a few times before where, like, members just had issues and, like, no matter what we said, it was wrong. Like, I'm not going to sit here for 5 days trying to, calm somebody down because of one post. No?
Yes, some issues
Got my loss.
doesn't work.
I'm sorry.
Like some issues you just cannot
Yeah.
fix. Like, people gotta have to live with it or
Exactly.
without, but you cannot resolve it.
Exactly.
Oh, I was just going to say that in the end, somebody has to be in charge, and someone has to make the final decision. And what you said,
Yeah.
but the way the benefits of the group against a small minority, and you have to be careful that the minority is not louder than the majority.
Yeah.
I think you're
Absolutely.
doing the right thing. Yeah. What were you going to say? Yeah.
Well, I'm just gonna top on what you said. A particularity with neurodivergence is that we are usually indecisive. So you being able to call the shot helps a lot of people around you, Chuck. It should be celebrated.
We're talking about my weekend.
Like I said, I've never done this for ego, and like when people say stuff like this, like I've been talking to a friend that I supported for over 10 years with her business, and like I explained to her like what I've been going through and like what I've been dealing with, and like she was like, "Oh yeah, like I've dealt with that too." And just having somebody who's been in business for well over 10 years saying the same things that I'm dealing with, and that's normal, and things like that, it means a lot. And she's supportive of me, and the fact that people keep on saying, like, Eric and Scarlett and Ev, like, just this conversation right now, like, that you're supportive of me, it blows my mind. It really does. And I am so appreciative of what you guys are doing, whatever, like, I'm
And speaking about recognition,
I can see this weighs heavy on Chuck.
speaking about recognition, like, Chuck, honestly, you picked up interest in us when we had like 3 subscribers to our podcast. We were just getting started, and you saw the potential in us. You actually enabled us to get where we are today. So I'm gonna return the appreciation, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, like I said previous, like I know that there's a higher rate of substance use in NDs, and this is what you guys are focusing on, and like it works out perfectly for both of us. So like I have no problem bringing you guys on, and I am very appreciative of what you guys are doing and topics that you're talking about, and it means a lot to me to see another part of my vision coming together, you know? And it's not like I'm expecting you guys to, come underneath my brand. I like always expect you guys to be 12-step crashers. But just the fact that you're giving the information out there for us, for people that may be going through substance use issues, I'm very appreciative of that as well. So like, thank you guys. I'm blown away by what you guys are doing.
I'm getting to the end of this podcast, and I'm just gonna make myself a bit vulnerable about what you just said. I think that is very difficult in early recovery is being somewhat disabled, distrust, and a lack of purpose. Like, I mean, everything that I've been good at in my life, I can't do either because I'm not capable of or because I'm not entrusted to do. So this podcast is definitely purposeful. We receive a lot of feedback around it, and I believe it has the potential to actually help a lot of people. And it gives, in many ways, a new sense to my existence, And I presume, I'm just going to throw it out there, that the reason why you are invested into NDPX is something similar, right?
Yeah, I saw a need, and I didn't expect much out of this, group, but I realized that adults didn't have the support, and I realized that it should be expanded to help more adults, because I've seen people come on like, hey, I just came on for my kids, to like learn more about, their diagnosis, and yeah, I think I might have to talk to a psychologist. No, like I've literally seen that, and then like the other ones of like, oh my god, like I can't believe, like I always thought I was such a weirdo, and I'm just reading some of these posts, and it's just like, oh my god, my people.
And it's uncomfortable, right?
So it's like
most of us don't have a diagnosis. So to identify as neurodivergent,
like,
it's like a coming out.
like I said, yeah, like I said, like I'm undiagnosed, but I believe I'm autistic and ADHD plus dyspraxia, dyscalculia, a few other sprinkling is in there, but it definitely explains who I am and why I am, and why I feel so one thing with the autistics is that they have a extreme sense of justice, and also I believe that's ADHD, and that's like part of what I'm doing here. Like, this is the right thing to do.
On this, Chuck, it was great having you both, Scarlett and you, on the podcast. And Eric, I'm gonna take some executive decisions, Aaron. I guess you will agree with me. We should definitely have you back on air, discuss some more about that topic, because of course we're limited in time. If we go for a 2-hour episode, nobody will watch it. So an hour and a half should be reasonable.
Right.
But there's room for a few other of these discussions, if you agree.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Absolutely.
like, I definitely.
We've only got the surface
Yes,
here, I
we're
believe.
scratching the surface. That's exactly what it is, Eric. On this, thanks a lot. Chuck, you have a few last words too?
No, I just wanted to say thank you to having us on, and we definitely, I personally am more open to doing this again.
Definitely. I think we are all on the same page for that. Thanks
Excellent.
everyone for watching this far. If you did, if you didn't, we're not talking to you. Anyway. Bye guys.
Clearly.